Welcome to the And I Quote podcast. I'm Ashley Burden. I'm really excited today to chat with our guest, Caitlin Saenz, who's the Chief Operating Officer at Coverhound. Coverhound's a one-stop shop platform where shoppers can really compare, quote, and purchase insurance online from A-rated property and casualty carriers like Coterie. So with that, I'd love to give it over to Caitlin to introduce yourself and just tell us our listeners a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I'm Caitlin Saenz. I've been with Coverhound for about 7 years now, going on 7. We were one of the first adapters of Coterie, so we were really early into the process of working with you guys, and it's been a very fun journey. For me personally, I've been in insurance for 16 years, which is scary to say. I've worked on the carrier side, I've worked on the broker side. I've been an agent myself, still a licensed agent, also in the technology piece. So it's funny how insurance has this perception about just kind of being selling insurance, and it's so much deeper than that. And so InsurTech is definitely my favorite niche within insurance for sure.
So then transitioning now, you're at Coverhound, you're the Chief Operating Officer. What's that experience been like for you being in this leadership position and in the InsurTech space?
That has also been a roller coaster. So everyone thinks insurance is boring. It is not. We
I
are here
agree.
to tell you, it is not.
Yeah.
So again, kind of going back to baby Caitlin, I like to bring baby Caitlin out a lot.
Mhm.
You know, she's on the phones, she's dealing with people mad about their bills and trying to do all these things, right? And again, if you've been a licensed agent, you can relate.
Mhm.
And she's trying to sell her umbrella policies because that's a metric.
Yeah.
And, pretty early on, I realized that because I cared so much about educating people and understanding their lives, even as, again, just a very small personalized agent,
Sure.
I did really well. But eventually it got to the point where if I wanted to keep moving up, I had to be more mobile. I had to be more things that I didn't want to be.
Sure.
And so that's when I started asking myself, I was almost 30. I think I was 29. What am I supposed to do? Right? What's next? Is it still insurance? Is it not? And a recruiter from that Coverhound had hired reach out, and it was very, again, serendipitous. Hey, here's new, it's within your skill set, but it's very different. So I went in as a director of retention, which is what I was doing at the later end of my career at Geico.
Okay.
And, from there, again, understanding the brokerages, understanding 10, 12, 30 carriers instead of one. And you can remember Coverhound, we were, anyone who had an API, we were more than willing and able to work with. So that carrier list got pretty huge.
Yeah.
And so as I moved through leadership in Coverhound, that's been a lot of the journey. That's where I ended up in the C-suite position. There's been a lot of lessons. There's a lot of lessons in understanding personality types. It's a lot of lessons in understanding the business itself and the market shifts. And, I was kind of in a golden age at Geico for sure. I started 2008, and so things were pretty happy. So I skipped all the drama before, and we're kind of into some drama now, which is also navigating. So for me, the journey has been one of learning a lot, in which I think sometimes leaders are afraid to say, or maybe they're not, but it's true.
Yeah.
It's a lot of learning on the fly, right?
Yeah.
It's been wonderful to see the team grow. We have a very original team, and they have had their own growth journey with me. And so it's been really fun to see people from 7 years ago to where they are today. So it's been wild. It's been challenging. It's also, stepping in front of a board of directors, it's our steering committee, is a whole different playing field. So for me, it's just been a lot of fun. I can't say no stress.
No
stress. A lot of fun.
I like that, but real balance though. I like that, your take on that for sure. And it's good to hear, just kind of your mindset and the learning aspect that you mentioned, because I think that is huge. A lot of people, in this industry, they might be a little bit reluctant to admit that there's still things to learn, but it's constantly changing too. So I think it's important that you mention that for sure.
Absolutely. Because this market is changing again. Small business
it is.
Change this year. I'm we're going to personal lines 2 years ago. Okay, let me get ready.
So I love that you mentioned that. So then kind of, take us through your leadership journey with maybe, whether it's leading a team or building out a team and things like that. Obviously, one of the keys to success is having a happy and a team that's running and functioning well. So what would you say is one of the most important metrics or responses to look at from an employee standpoint to gauge like how you're doing as a leader, and then even holistically as a company, how the company is doing?
For sure. I think it's a hard question to answer because everyone is different. Every leader is different.
Sure.
So I'm obviously just speaking from like my personal experience within Coverhound and Geico, but more recently Coverhound, obviously. Like I have to be involved. I can't say you have to be involved, but I have to be involved.
Yeah.
And so if I'm pulling my head up from a computer every 6 months, especially because we're fully remote, let me just kind of preface that we are a
Okay.
fully remote company.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm pulling my head up every 6 months and going, oh, I wonder how everyone's doing. Like our results are great. So that must mean we're happy, right? Like that's not going to fly.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
And so I think the biggest metric is
Mhm.
the team involvement.
Mm.
So whether you're in person or remote,
Mhm.
the engagement and involvement of a team is going to very quickly tell you like happiness levels. So
Sure.
a team that's like disengaged, a leadership that's disengaged, people who are not, showing up. And that doesn't mean everyone. Like some people are
Right.
introverts, extroverts, some people are more socially anxious than not, right? So it's
Right.
understanding your team first and
Mhm.
foremost,
Mhm.
and then seeing how they show up. Are they showing up in an authentic way to themselves?
Yeah.
And if they're not, I think that's the biggest problem. But if as a leader, you're not engaged and you're not paying attention, then you're not going to know. You're just going
Right.
to assume everything's good
Yeah.
because results are good, or everything's bad because results are bad.
Mhm.
And I would absolutely say that happy employees are going to give you happy customers.
True.
But
Very
there are
true.
times where people can execute and do what they're supposed to do and make these things and not be happy themselves. So
Very good point. I think that's super valid, especially like you mentioned in the remote environment, similar here at Coterie, right? But I think it's important, like you said, to just not necessarily tie the results to that engagement across employees because there are, we're all individual. We all have unique, some days are 100%, some days we're not. But just in order, for a leader to see that, I think it's important to be really hands-on. So I appreciate that you mentioned that. That's definitely huge. So what are some of the things that you as a leader feel like you can do to kind of, harness whether it's a really great culture and you want to like hold on to that, or if maybe you notice some things that are maybe not as on the positive side and you want to sort of make some changes, what are some things that you would recommend as a leader that actions you can take?
for sure. And this is very relevant and recent. So I love
Good.
that you asked this question. So we do something that we call Spirit Week once a year.
Nice.
So once a year, everyone goes to California, whether they're in California or not, everyone's invited.
Hmm.
And we have Spirit Week. And that week is usually a meeting that's kind of here's last year, here's our vision, here's our
Hmm.
KPIs.
Okay.
And so we have that, and we have some kind of team building event. This year it was skating. We all went to a skating rink, and
Love it.
yes, a lot of fun. Even people who had never skated tried, which definitely fills my heart with joy because I'm a big proponent of getting out of your comfort zone and
Yes.
kind of practicing that resilience. And
Hmm.
so we also had a whole photo shoot where everyone got brand new headshots. It was cohesive, it was on brand, and some team photos, which turned out so good.
Oh, fun. I
Which was
love that.
also a lot of fun to be in LA getting like photos taken.
Yeah.
That was a whole experience
For
as well.
sure. Yeah.
We also, we did a leadership hike. We do lunches. I try to get one-on-one meetings. So
Nice.
first and foremost, like showing up in that way.
Yeah.
But that's once a year.
Hmm.
And if you're in person, I would still say something similar to that is very
Yeah.
important. Like we used to have happy hours and
Hmm.
Christmas parties and different things that it had the same purpose or intent,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Hmm.
And then the second thing that I do, and we're a small team, is I try once a quarter to schedule 15 minutes with everyone.
Okay.
My data entry clerk to
Hmm.
my, customer success manager to like everyone.
Everyone. I like that.
Yes. And so that has helped a lot.
Hmm.
But the caveat to that is when we were in some of our breakout sessions and team building and Spirit Week, the biggest piece of feedback that was shocking to me, my senior leadership team, was like, we don't feel like we know each other anymore.
Interesting.
And
Yeah.
I'm like, ow,
Yeah.
ow.
Yeah.
Um,
It hurts a little bit.
but they're right. Like
Hmm.
we absolutely do these things and we try to catch up with each other, but we don't sit in office anymore.
Yeah.
We don't get to like, when you sit in office and someone comes in like visibly frustrated, upset, like you're like, what's wrong?
What's wrong? Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
We don't have that luxury.
Yeah.
And so that was something that, we think we have this great culture, people are showing up and we're happy, but everyone was really nervous to see each other this year. And it was because they were like, we don't feel like we know everyone. And when we got together, it was like old times again, right? Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
fine. But it was this anxiety about like, I have to sit in this room with these people, but we're the same team. We've literally sat together for years. I'm one of the least tenured people at Coverhound at 7 years, you know?
Interesting. Yeah.
So that's what I would say. Like those are again very specific examples, but
Sure.
it's about asking the question, making space to be able to be honest and talk through some of these things.
Yeah.
And then still understanding, we had people that didn't come to skating, that didn't do that, and that's okay, right?
And
Like
that's
that might be
yeah.
a little too much for that person. Like it's fine.
Yeah. I think that is definitely, something that you hit the nail on the head with in terms of, giving people the space and the safe space to be transparent about what they're feeling. And, that's natural. Like we're all like human where it's like, if you don't feel comfortable in an environment, you want to feel comfortable before going in, like give people that. And I think that's incredible that that's something that you're actually looking at and paying attention to. So then if you feel, and you kind of touched on this too, like if, things are kind of going maybe in a less, positive way, and you can start to implement change. Now, are there ways that you would recommend like implementing change or implementing new, things to kind of improve the culture on a team?
100%. The first piece I would say to that question is that you are not an island. And the reality is, whether it's a senior leadership team, whether it's any teammate, like I like to make a distinction that like you don't have to rely on like certain people. Anyone who has an interest in like event planning, like your social butterfly, whoever, get their help, because people are very willing to give you feedback, advice, tips if you're willing to ask. And again, create a safe space for them to be like, every time you do this, it doesn't work. And you're like, okay, like my bad.
Exactly.
And so I think first and foremost, you don't have to be an island. You don't have to tackle the problem by yourself, regardless of your role. This is not all on you. That's the point of a team. And then two, it would be to like really listen. So if you don't know your team that well, I think I, again, have an advantage. But let's say you're a new leader who's just stepped in and you can sense that like there's a culture disconnect and you want to fix it. Well, like you can't be Superman and just come in and like wave a wand and, it's fixed. You have to understand the people. So take some time to observe. Sit in some meetings if you can, whether again, in person or remote. Have like schedule 15-minute, catch ups with certain people from certain teams if that's all you have space for. And just start to ask questions, because if you ask questions and you're interested in people and their responses, you're going to get a lot.
Yeah. That's very important, the asking questions piece. And, even if people are a little bit more reserved, I think when they sense a genuine interest and you ask the right questions, that you'll definitely be able to pull out, those insights and what's going right and what might not be going the best for them. But I think that's important. Like you said, just asking those questions, that natural curiosity goes a long way, for sure.
It does. If we were all more curious, I feel like it would definitely be a happier world.
Agree, 100%. I think we kind of lose that, right, as the older we get or the more advanced in our careers, but it's so important to still have that curiosity and just natural interest in people.
For sure. And people feel it.
They do for sure. So yeah, I want to switch gears a little bit too, just to think about, we got to go back to the insurance piece of things. And you mentioned you being in the agency space. So when you think about, independent agencies and small businesses, they're usually made up of just a few employees. So, when you think about maybe when you're on the agency side or even your experience now, maybe talking to agents, what are some tips or what are some things that you could recommend for them? Like if a new agent is kind of looking to grow their agency, what are some things that they can sort of think about to make sure that they're hiring, whether it's a good culture fit or someone who's truly going to, help and contribute to the agency and their growth?
Yeah. That again, I love philosophical questions. I'm a Sagittarius, so like I could be in the stars all day. Like culture fit is such a unique perspective, right? And I think that we have to be careful in how we're defining it, and that's on us as leaders. Because I could be like, a culture fit means they look and talk and sound just like me. And that is not a culture fit, right? Like that's the very opposite. For us, when we think about culture fit, and when I think when I'm searching for a culture fit, because again, we just hired 2 new people, both part-time, and that was our biggest thing. Like I can coach, I can teach, I will help, I am kind, but like there's certain things, will versus skill, right? Like I can help skill all day long, but like will, I don't have a lot of, I'm not a therapist. I don't know. I can't spend that much time on that.
Sure.
But when you're thinking of culture fit, you need to think
Mhm.
of like, what is your objective here, right?
Mhm.
My
Yeah.
objective is to have a team that can grow and scale and like I can retire off of as an
Sure.
independent agent, right?
Yeah.
Like that's my dream. And
Mhm.
maybe I'll have like a million or two.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, the second thing is you have to ask yourself, well, how do I operate?
Mhm.
And that's very hard sometimes
Yeah.
because depending on age, experience, like personality type, you're going to operate very differently. So,
True.
someone who operates very differently than me cannot hire the same way I would hire or who I would hire, even.
Yeah.
And so, I like to think I'm funny, uh, but I'm definitely fun.
Yes.
And I like to create a fun environment. I have a motto I like to say, like, I have fun, but I don't play.
Yeah,
So,
I like that.
that's and so I hired that way. Like when you
Yeah.
come in, you know, and it doesn't mean being introverted or extroverted,
Sure.
right? It's just like,
Sure.
can you come in and if we're all roasting each other, are you going to be like upset? Are you going to be like, this
Yeah.
is funny? And I say that within reason, right? Within like
Right. Right. For
boundaries.
sure.
Um, if you come in and things are a little chaotic for a moment, right before we hound it in, because
Mhm.
like we're trying to dial things in, we're chasing markets.
Yeah.
We change a lot. Like there was a time where personal lines was our bread and butter. Right
Mhm.
now, personal lines is a dumpster fire, and so we're
Yeah.
like, let's look at SMB, and now
Yeah.
SMB, which is small medium business.
Mhm.
I'm sure they know, but now they're like, now that's getting a little tighter. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
well, like, and we're literally strategizing now. So I think you have to say, like, what's important. So for
Mhm.
me, it's someone who can, you know, roll with the punches, who
Yeah.
is coachable, who's not going to be stuck in there. Like, this is my job description only, because we're a very small team.
Yeah.
And other than that, honestly, I don't necessarily care if you're licensed or not. If you
Mhm.
show a curiosity and an interest and like, you know, the ability to study and
But
pass a
yeah.
test.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I don't care. When we did we were looking at people, we're looking at people who maybe they're licensed, maybe they're not. And there
Mhm.
were licensed people that I just didn't think they would come in our environment and be happy. I didn't think they would be
Yeah.
happy with like changing expectations every
Mhm.
year. If today it's personal lines and tomorrow it's small, medium
Yep.
business, and then the next day it's cyber focused.
Yep.
Because we do have to pivot to be able to hang with the tide.
Yeah.
And so
100%.
that's kind of a long-winded advice if I had to summarize,
Sure.
is to say, understand who you are, how you do business, how you
Mhm.
operate. Are you stricter? Are you more loose? Like, and hire people that align with some of those things. Are you only
Yeah.
focused on personal lines ever? Hire people that are really good at that. If you're going to
Mhm.
be moving and kind of flowing with the tide and flowing the technology, hire people who are okay with that.
Yeah.
Um, and then like don't look for culture fits as much as you look for people who are aligned with your values,
Yeah.
aligned with your vision, and aligned with your kind of work style. So again,
Yes.
if you're stricter, if you're looser, whatever.
Mhm. Totally makes sense. And I think it overall, like when you look at it that way and, look to grow your team that way, then it results in a happier team that's more cohesive and, you don't have to worry about, there's always going to be something there, but just those like, small things that just bubble up and become like really disharmonious to a team. So I think that's great that you mentioned that. Awesome tips for our
Yeah.
audience. So thank you for sharing. And then, it was funny because like to flip it a little bit, not to be on the negative side of things, but there are those times where you do have to have those difficult conversations, right? Like
Mhm.
any team, any relationship, marriage, whatever it is, you're going to have like those tough conversations. So what
Oh
is
yeah.
your approach to those when you do kind of have to have a little bit more of a difficult conversation?
So someone mentioned this at Geico years and years ago, and it was like
Mhm.
any conversation is a good conversation if it comes from a place of honesty and strength and kindness
True.
and strength.
Yeah.
And so I can deliver a message that I want to hurt someone, or I can deliver a message that is just very factual. And
Hmm.
I don't mean it, I mean it in the kindest way, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So we have had to let people go. We have had
Hmm.
rounds of layoffs, but
Hmm.
additionally, we've had performance things that just were not aligned with
Sure.
even some very tenured people.
Hmm.
And those are very hard. And when you've worked with these people for a long time and you appreciate them and you know their families and their partners, and it's really hard to sit down and be like, we've been working on this for like at this point 2 years, and like
Yeah.
I don't see it getting better. And from a business
Hmm.
standpoint, like I can't keep supporting it.
Yeah.
But come from a place of kindness and strength.
Yes.
Um, and then also I do think that things are better handled early. Like the
True.
longer behaviors or problems or whatever keep going, the more of a shock it is when something's done.
Yeah.
And I get why, like, you keep wanting to help someone, give them a second chance, but
Yeah.
if you're not doing your follow-up, if you're not continuously coaching and continuously talking about it, then the messages are mixed, right?
Yeah.
It's like, don't do this, but you've been doing it 6 more months afterward, and now maybe I'm saying
Right.
something like,
Yeah.
so
Amazing.
those are my tips. And again, not every conversation has been a great conversation, but
Yeah.
they have to be had. It's
True.
better to just have them. And
Mm-hmm.
I can honestly say that every person who has had this conversation that I'm aware of now, that I know where their lives are today,
Mm-hmm.
they're happier.
Yeah.
They felt
Yeah.
like it was the best thing for them as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I've literally had someone tell me that they're happy and grateful that I made that call for them, even though it was
Yeah.
like really hard at the time. And it took them
Yeah.
4 months to come back around and say that.
Yeah.
But so
That I love that you shared that because I think those are, really important. Like no one wants to have, a challenging conversation or one that, may not be received well, but to be, honest, direct, like you say, early on, I think those are really great, tips for sure. So love that you shared that. So you really I love to kind of, then flip it back on the positive side. When you think about, we're recording this at the beginning of 2024. So thinking about the rest of this year, what are you most excited about? Like what's, something you're pumped about, whether it's your team, the challenge there, like what is something that you're just looking forward to this year?
Well, this year is all about growth for us. And so we had to take a step back, post acquisition and say, like, how are we supposed to be operating? We're in this bigger company now, right? That has like different goals,
Mm-hmm.
which is all really exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And I love Brown and Brown. I just have to say that too. Brown and Brown purchased us in 2020. That itself has been like a fantastic transition.
Yeah.
But I think I'm most excited about the growth phase because we're digging into like marketing again, but what I'm calling like real marketing, not just like paying Google ads, not that
Sure.
that's not part of it, but like
Right.
really brand building and talking to an audience. And I told you, like, I'm very passionate about like securing people, securing their
Mm-hmm.
assets. And I feel like now there's a space for me to start actually like doing that again, where it's been a couple years of kind of rebuilding from some rubble, like the old business model, the old way of doing business, old partnerships. Like I've heard a term recently said you have to kill some darlings. And like there's some things that we hold on to. It's like, it's my darling partnership, it's my darling this. And like they had to go.
Yeah.
And so seeing some of this stuff come together, seeing some of the team go out again. I went to a conference where, people like, oh my God, I forgot about Coverhound. Where have you guys? And I know it sounds weird. There was a part of me that hurt my little ego again.
Yeah.
But I was also just like, I get to bring this forward again. And my team and how like we define success together. We define the game plan together. My senior leadership is in the marketing team. My agents understood like the marketing strategy at our all hands. So we are very much all like, this is our small business. I like to say I'm an entrepreneur because like, this is ours. And the effort we put in today is the reward in 5 years. And so that for me is really exciting because we get to redefine how we help people to be more strategic and aligned with the goals. And of course, like the metrics and profitability and all that stuff. So
awesome. Well, that's exciting. I mean, there's, I always say a growth phase is always something to be passionate and excited about. And I can tell that passion shines through when you talk about it. I love that it just oozes out of you, which is really cool. But I love like everything you shared today. I think it's, great tips, whether they're in a leadership role now or looking to grow into a leadership role and even individual contributors. So I appreciate you sharing all your tidbits and insights with our audience. And then just to wrap things up, I'd love for you to share with our audience the ways to get in contact with you if they're interested in whether it's, professional development or just, learning more about the InsurTech space. How can our audience get in contact with you?
For sure. I am most active on LinkedIn right now. And so you can find me just LinkedIn Caitlin Saenz. I do have a Instagram that is like dead. So if you look at it, you're going to be like, there's like one picture. And I'm like, yes, but it's a very good picture. So I would say LinkedIn's the best way. You can also email me, caitlin.saenz@coverhound.com or just caitlin@coverhound.com. So feel free to reach out that way. And it's been a lot of fun chatting with you and your audience. So I appreciate you giving me the space to kind of share some of my experience.
Yes, I appreciate you for coming on. Thank you for your time. And again, thank you for sharing yourself and your experience with our audience today, Caitlin.
Thank you. We'll talk to you later.
Coterie provides agents with the best tools to help them succeed and sell. Coterie loves to write 80% of all small commercial businesses, but what classes are those? Are you a Coterie insurance agent or partner? Visit our resources page to find our top 10 classes we love to write this month.